Regalis Pieces, a very powerful artifact as mentioned in Regalis Epic that brings you a great power and was a main force behind the plot in the Regalis Epic as well. But since then, we have been seeing more Regalis Pieces that are both related to the story and not related to the story, and right now there are 6 of them. Of course, there is a 7th one coming, but I feel that one deserves its own video after I have made my thoughts on how good each of the 6 Regalis Pieces are. Before we get into the list itself, I have to establish some rules here, and there is nothing much to talk about aside from the fact that I'm gonna be judging this based on how effective it is as a Regalis piece. Do note Regalis Pieces does have a lot of restriction coming to it just for being a Regalis piece, as not only you can only run one copy of the card in your whole deck, a lot of card effect that can search for order effectively doesn't really works with Regalis piece. But other than that, it's gonna be pretty much a free real estate when it comes to how I'm gonna judge it. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with a very bottom of this list, we have a literal ball, the Evergreen Transfere. This card is a blitz order that is capable of increase your attack unit by a 25k until end of the battle, and for the rest of the turn you give your Vanguard ability, where if it is being attacked by a unit with 100 million power or higher, the critical -1. Well, in all fairness, this ability is alright. Like, the fact that you have a way to counter overtrigger is a good thing. But the problem with this card, and in my opinion the reason why a lot of people don't really play it, is because of the fact that it is very bad at the job. If we are not counting nation collab overtriggers, close or even more than half of the available overtriggers does have some kind of ability to get additional critical.
Why are you like this?
So this literally means that the -1 critical from this effect is close to useless. Yes, it does counter certain overtrigger, but even with the one that is effective enough, it barely effective, because for certain decks, you can easily get away with the -1 critical. If this card kind of forced your opponent critical to be set at a certain amount, I wouldn't have been mad, because that would have been the ultimate counter to Elder Breast. But unfortunately, they did not go for that route, and because of that, I have to put it at the bottom of this list.
But wait!
It's still a good card regardless, because 25k generic blitz order is still good, but with Regalia restriction, I do feel a little bit more leeway is deserved. Moving on to number 5 of this list, and it is a card that I feel, I'm not saying it is bad per se, but I do feel that a lot of people do underestimate it, and there is a reason why. The number 5 is the latest entry to the Regalis piece, Radiance Caliburn. This card, essentially after you activate it, you either
Pot of Greed! This lets me draw 2 more cards!
I'll put this card into soul and countercharge 1. So yeah, essentially what this card do is a
Pot of Greed!
or get a resource, which is actually quite good, in a sense that draw 2 card will always be useful regardless of what deck you are playing, because that draw 2 can actually change the board state for a lot of decks, even if it feels little, especially with a lot of combo in Vanguard. Either give you more cards to your hand or have a way for you to get a better amount of resource with just a slightly more expensive cost. But I personally feel this card do have its use, and if you are a newer player and just started to play Vanguard and you are not able to get the older Regalis piece, I do think this is a nice replacement. It wouldn't be able to power creep the basic slot for certain deck, but if you have a spare copy of this around, you can just run it in your deck and it would not hurt your deck whatsoever.
Hey, that's pretty good.
That is a proof of how simple but extremely effective this card is. The only reason I'm not putting it any higher, because I feel there are more cards that does provided more usefulness to the deck more so than this card. Moving on into number 4, we have the only Regalis piece that are not grade 3, and that is of course Union the Sky. I like Union the Sky for the fact that it can be utilized in multitude of ways, as not only it works at a 15k blitz order, which technically can get into higher power if you are playing into the later part of the game, it also gives you a free draw for both of the effect that is included, where its second effect is literally the same as the Energy Cycler. So yeah, the reason why I'm putting this list in number 4 is because of its possible usefulness as a discard cycler. And just like Caliburn, it can be easily fit in a lot of decks. The only drawback I would say with this card is just simply if your deck already use a lot of energy, in which there's a good number of the deck that is very energy starved, this card is not really fit to play for. And secondly, it is on a slower side because, you know, to be able to fully utilize the card, you need to bind a unit with the same name as your Vanguard from your soul or drop to actually pull off the 25k.
Not that big a deal.
So against certain deck, this card is not as useful, and as we all know, the draw is still random, which is why both Caliburn and Union in the Sky is lower on this list because we have essentially a way better card that do a very similar job compared to Union in the Sky and also Caliburn. One of those cards that I mentioned earlier is the third entry of this list, Bracing Angel Ladder. This card has ability where after you activate it, you can put it into your soul, draw a card, and then your Vanguard get 5k for that turn, and until end of your opponent turn, all of your red card cannot be moved away from your red card circle by card effects.
Nice.
Your opponent can still retire your red card by classic battle, but if they're trying to attempt to do anything else, it is useless. This, in my opinion, is the reason why a lot of people tend to play this card because it's essentially a guaranteed one-turn immunity to almost every single type of control you can think of. Dominate, get the hell out of here. Blankmire, Bind, get the hell out of here too. And of course, a lot of retire from Dragon Empire, get the freaking Gehenna out of here. This card is that good, but at the same time, I do feel that a lot of people tend to use this card in the weirdest way possible. Yes, it is a nice one slot in, but I feel the number 2 of this list is a better fit for a lot of decks. But if your deck do use a lot of red card or needs your red card to be on the field, I think Bracing Angel Ladder is not a bad choice to play into, provided the base deck does have a way to control your board. Moving on to number 2, I will say this first. Ladder beat this card in terms of speed, but couldn't beat this card in terms of value. Number 2 is the classic Regalis piece that everyone run in their deck, Regalis Grale, aka Minerva Bathwater. This card essentially, as long as you didn't ride this turn, you can activate the Persona Rite and then you just perform the Persona Rite as usual. Essentially turning this card into your 5th Persona Rite. And that is where the good part about the card is and the bad part about it. The good part is that Persona Rite is a very crucial skill to pull off for almost every single deck in Standard. The moment you manage to pull off the Persona Rite, a whole new world of toolboxing and power level is unlocked. But at the same time, it is also one of the slowest Regalis piece out of the 6 because of the fact that it can only be start playing from turn 4 onwards.
But wait! There's more!
And here comes the dilemma. I know this is second place and I might talk negatively about it. Don't worry, it is still a great card, but I have to kind of tell you the reason why I'm putting this card at number 2. And it kind of boils down to the fact that a lot of times, if you have a grade 3 that can be Persona Rite onto your Vanguard and a Grale, you usually go for the former. And that is because of that additional soul you can get from it. And certain deck supports only work if you ride your Vanguard normally. So Regalis Grale, as much as it is very powerful generic tools, it tends to be a second choice to the better option you can have at the time, and because of that, it feels right to leave it in number 2, just as it always has been.
Emotional damage!
As my favorite Regalis piece from the current roster is Regalis Surrogate. Okay, some people might disagree with me with this choice because this is far from being the most generic Regalis piece out of the bunch.
No, he's got a point.
Because the decks that benefit from this card the most are the decks that run a lot of grade 3s and running a grade 4. As this card's ability is to allow you to search for any 2 cards from your deck or your drop zone. If it is a grade 3, you core it. If it is a grade 4, you add it to your hand.
It was perfect. Perfect.
With just a quick explanation of how it works should be enough to proven you that Regalis is easily one of the best Regalis pieces in the game. It literally do a deck thinning in the best way possible for those decks that fulfill the requirement. As not only it helps you to build the board very easily, don't forget this is literally a +1 onto your board advantage. And secondly, it does fix the main issue that the grade 4 deck has, and that is the lack of searcher. I know some decks do have it like hot/4 for Dry Jewel, Zero for Magnolia, or even Security Garner for Pure Light. But I feel sometimes it is nice to have an insurance, and Surrogate is a perfect insurance in that regard. As long as you pull a Forbiddle, regardless of which part of the game you pull, the moment you can use it, it's always lead you to a better board overall. But that's my thoughts about it. Do you guys think that I'm putting certain cards too low or too high? Do leave down in the comments below. So yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, and this is Mac Mechanic signing out.